We're back here in Extra Rounds. Full disclosure, before I start my next interview, I've got to say that I married an Iowa Hawkeye graduate, so I can't say that Jordan Burroughs is the greatest wrestler, but he's pretty damn good. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for the invitation, bro.
No, it's my pleasure. I mean, we've been talking about you in the mixed martial arts world for a long time because there's been a lot of anticipation on whether or not you would fight mixed martial arts, and that was ignited a couple of years back again when you handled Ben Askren in the way that you did. Before I ask you about maybe future ambitions, I just want to know how big of a mixed martial arts fan you are.
A huge fan, really, especially because I've seen the transition of a lot of my former friends and teammates go on to become wildly successful in the UFC, right? So I watched that, and like as a competitor, naturally, I'm like, damn, if these guys can do it, I know I can do it. I got the chops, I got the athleticism, the mindset. But I've become such a big fan too because I've watched the way it's grown because of all of the nuance and intricacies of from marketing standpoint that Dana and the Fertitta brothers originally put into the program. Like it's been really special. So wrestling has consistently tried to replicate a lot of what you guys have done, whether it's airing the weigh-ins or having face-offs or talking trash in an interview or a press conference. Like there's so many elements of the UFC that it's marketed itself so extremely well, bigger than boxing, bigger than any martial art ever. I think it's pretty special. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I watch it pretty much anytime there's a big card or there's someone that I'm familiar with that I like. I've watched pretty much every organization from the PFL to Bellator to ONE FC to you guys. It's pretty special.
One thing I will say is while the wrestling world has maybe borrowed some elements of, putting on a show the way that the UFC does, I think UFC fans, they might start as MMA fans, but have been forced to appreciate the sport of wrestling. And now I know more fight fans are like tuning into the NCAA national championships on ESPN every year because at times, Jordan, it seems like it's just a preview of who we might see in the octagon later down the road.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know what? Early on, they used to diss wrestling a lot. He's like, oh, they gotta take a guy down, lay on top of him for 25 minutes. No one wants to see that. But I think now we've realized that it's such a unique discipline. And I say this all the time, like wrestlers are one of the few disciplines that you start from a very young age. I started wrestling at 6 years old. Right. I weigh 45 pounds. I'm 34 years old. So I've been in this discipline for 28 years. I've done it at every level, from high school, scholastic, to college, to now at the senior level. So I think that's the demand that we've put on ourselves, that it's second nature to us, where a lot of people, they get into judo and jujitsu and Muay Thai later in their career. So I think that's what makes wrestling unique. But yeah, absolutely. I see a lot of guys now that are less interested in becoming Olympic and world champions, and fresh out of college, they already have the inclination where they're like, I'm going to go take over this weight class. I want to be a UFC champion. And that's pretty special. And it's scary too, because I'm thinking these guys are 21 years old, fresh off of wrestling for 15 years of their life, and now they're going to make this transition. It's a dangerous proposition for their opponents. I think it's going to be special.
The hottest wrestling prospect in mixed martial arts now and of the last few years is Bo Nickal, who's multiple time national champion at Penn State. What are your thoughts, and what do you think the ceiling is for Bo in mixed martial arts?
Yeah, he's excellent. He's excellent. Phenomenal wrestler. One of the best things about his wrestling was he'd like to put on a show. He was a big move guy. He threw caution to the wind. He loved to let it fly, and I think that is going to create a very exciting mixed martial artist. But also, I think he operates with a swagger and a high level of confidence, and you can see it in just in the way that he styles himself, the way that he dresses, the way that he approaches his matches, the way that he tweets, the way that he just, everything about him just screams superstar.
Yeah.
So I think watching him wrestle, watching him grow up through the sport, and knowing the elite level that he competed at in wrestling, and then watching him slow play his transition to MMA, where he's really taking his time. He's beating up on guys that he knows he can beat, so he can slowly build his name, but he's also in the lab, like really tweaking and refining his skill set. I think that when he arrives, he's going to be already so good at what he does that he's going to demand a title shot pretty quickly.
I mean, I had a chance to call a grappling match with him at the Apex in Las Vegas, and he's a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's hanging on the mat with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. You know what I mean?
Right?
It's like, it's crazy. You give someone of that high caliber of a wrestler more, tools to strangle their opponent. They're pretty badass.
but that's the thing. There's no ranking system in wrestling. But
Right.
if you could qualify him as, he would be a multiple time black belt just because of all the
100%.
time that he's put in. But yeah, man, I think he's phenomenal. I think he's gonna be great at this sport.
So let me ask you this, because I looked at interviews from a couple of years ago, and it seems like you flip flop a little bit back and forth on a potential MMA
Yeah,
career for yourself. Like 1 minute it's like, I don't really want to do it. I don't want to focus on wrestling. And then I read another interview that you said you didn't want to have any regret when your career is all said and done. Where are you at now on potentially fighting in MMA?
bro, I've wavered so much in this decision because, well, one, I'm so successful at wrestling. I'm still winning. Like, there are a lot of people who transition to MMA not because they want to be stars, but because they really don't have any other option. They
Right.
stick around in wrestling. They're not particularly good at it to be an Olympic or world champion, world team member. So they're like, well, I could work really hard and be second or third best, or I could go to MMA and potentially be champion, make more money, and do less. So I think that initially was kind of the reasoning behind a lot of guys switching over to MMA. But I think now, for me, I've looked at it and said, okay, I'm really good at this. Wrestling fans love me. They've embraced me. I've changed the sport. I've become the face of the sport. Now, if I transition over to MMA, essentially I'm starting from scratch. I've got to learn how to strike. I've got to learn how to avoid submissions. And I have to do a lot of things that I'm uncomfortable and unfamiliar with too. I watch guys get the crap beat out of them. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know if I really want that. Right. I watch a guy get split and I'm like, or a nose broken, limb broken. Like when you lose a wrestling match, you go to the crib, you have a good meal, you kick it with your family. Use an MMA fight, you take the ambulance straight to the hospital. It's a much different aspect. And not saying that I'm afraid, but I'm just like, man, do I really want to take this much damage for what? Like all the things that appeal to me from MMA is all about pride and ego, right? I want people to see how good I am at combat. I want to make a lot of money and I want celebrities ringside so more people can know who I am. That's pretty much it. I don't know how many fighters actually love to fight, but you love the intangibles. You love all the things that have come alongside fighting. So, I get it, but I love wrestling. I think wrestling's a more a pure art form, but I'm a big fan of MMA and I respect it a lot. So, I kind of flounder back and forth between the two. My wife's not a big fan. She's like, listen, we got 4 kids. I love you. I don't want to see you get busted up. I'm nervous before a wrestling match. Imagine how I'd feel if you were getting locked into a cage. So I get it. But I don't know. I never say never, but at this point in time, I'm getting older. I'm 34 years old. I'm still rolling. I'm a world champion. My goal is to be an Olympic champion. Someone
Right.
asked me, you could be UFC champ or Olympic champ. Olympic champion would be head and shoulders uh, above and what I wanted.
You actually hit what I thought might be the cause of you not jumping over to MMA, and that is just continued success at an international level in wrestling. If it isn't broke, don't go and fix it. But,
Yeah.
I would love to see you maybe, Jordan, one day transition to submission grappling, work that
Yeah.
or combat jiu-jitsu where you have ground strikes on the floor with just palm strikes.
Yeah, I saw is it the ADCC?
Yep.
The big Gordon Ryan fight a few weeks ago, and man, they blew that thing up. It's wild to kind of watch the growth and development of all combat sports. The UFC and MMA has really elevated the status of every single art form,
100%.
and that's just special. And so, but you see a guy like Gordon Ryan, like why wouldn't he transition to MMA? Because he's the best at what he does.
Yeah.
He's the best at what he
Yeah.
does. So every room that he walks into in a jujitsu forum or a grappling forum, he's the man, right? And so I think we're kind of in that same boat. I am the Gordon Ryan of wrestling, and we kind of operate on these same parallels where, yeah, it could be lucrative and it could be interesting for us to make the transition, but we're so good at what we do and we love what we do, and we've been paid handsomely to do what we do. I just don't know if we necessarily want to take that sort of damage.
Understandable. And you're still, like I said, competing at an international level in wrestling, but also still very much ingrained in that community. Before we get you out of here, I want to talk about your new relationship with Rudis. It's one thing to be an endorsed athlete and wear gear and represent that way. But I was reading some notes that like you signed this agreement with Rudis and essentially came in and all of a sudden became like a designer of the apparel yourself.
Yeah. So I've always fashioned myself as a creative. Like I love to design elements that I can wear, that I enjoy, that I feel confident in. But also, I've wanted to be with a company that would give me creative freedom and give me the ability to kind of implement my own mindset into the stuff that we were creating. Because like a lot of times, and I'm sure you can attest to this from athletes that you've interacted with. Like, oftentimes we are just cut a check, right? So it's like, you're an endorsed athlete. Here's some gear. Go on the website, get whatever you want for you and your family. We'll cut you a check each month. Be quiet, be happy.
Right.
But like for me, I've always wanted to have more creative control in the process. I wanted to be involved because I wanted it to feel more like a partnership. And Rudis has given me that opportunity. And so we've signed a long-term deal. I'll probably be with those guys for the remainder of my life. My sons, my daughters, if they wrestle, they'll all be under the Rudis umbrella. And then lastly, I think what we provide, the marketing, the product, the quality, but also I think it's the vibe, it's the energy, it's the love, it's the appreciation for our craft that the people can really feel. And so that's what makes the company special. I'm excited to be representing those guys, and we've got some really good stuff behind the scenes that we're creating.
I think that's cool too, because I have seen endorsement deals with athletes in the past where you can tell they're just given the product to wear, and it's like, it doesn't look good on you, man. It's not your vibe. That's not your style. And, you got to go out there and be you. And it's cool that Rudis is giving you that ability to, wave your own flag while also simultaneously representing them.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. They've got a great owner, Jesse Lang, and we've got a phenomenal company. We've got great employees, an entire staff of phenomenal, sharp young men and women that are really trying to create something special for the wrestling community. So as we branch out and we try to transcend wrestling, our goal is to always stay rooted in what created and established our brand, and that was the sport of wrestling. There's nothing like it, man. There's truly nothing like it. I think you'll start to see MMA fighters be born and bred from a young age, but until then, wrestling is probably the most purest art form in which kids start at a very young age. It's built off tradition, it's built off lineage. If your dad wrestled, you're wrestling. Your older brother wrestled, you're wrestling. And so I think that's what makes it the most special sport in the world. It teaches character unlike any other.
I agree with you, because when you talk about, wrestling at a young age, mixed martial arts, if you're going to be an MMA fighter, you have to live that lifestyle. Wrestlers have been forced to live that lifestyle long before they become MMA fighters. So they're already ingrained in that. I have this, there's an old saying, like, embrace the grind, wrestlers grind. And, you're a step ahead of everyone else when you grow up with that mentality. Jordan, I appreciate the time. Best of luck with everything moving forward. But I got to see you on a combat jiu-jitsu stage one day, or jiu-jitsu.
I know.
Some way.
You know what? I'm not opposed to it. I love grappling. I love jiu-jitsu. I appreciate it a lot. I'd be interested in making the transition and seeing kind of what we could create if we could do something like that. But never say never. I don't know, man. Honestly, anything is possible. It would just have to be for the right amount, and I would have to be put in the right situation in which I could thrive. Like, I've been so good at this that I only want to do things that I know I'm good at. I don't want to go out there and throw myself to the wolves and go on a suicide mission. Like, I want to do something that I know I can thrive in. So, yeah, we'll see.
It's understandable. It's been thrown out there. So anybody with deep pockets, call Jordan Burroughs. Might be time. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. All right, brother.